Welcome back for today's class, History Unit 10, Industrial Revolution. In this module, we are going to discuss about the effects of Industrial Revolution in England and spread of Industrial Revolution in France, Germany and United States of America. Now let me move on to the video session.
History, Unit 10, Industrial Revolution. The latter half of the 18th century, major changes occurred in the method of production that changed the history of humankind. This profound transformation is described as the Industrial Revolution. Goods began to produce not by hand but by machines. This increased the volume of goods produced exponentially. The changes were not only economic but made a profound impact on society and politics. Attributes of Industrial Revolution. Attributes means causes. Use of new basic materials, iron and steel. Use of new energy sources, coal, electricity, petroleum. Invention of new machines such as the spinning jenny and the power loom that increase the production with the minimum expending of human energy. Emergence of a new organization known as the factory system, which entailed increased division of labor and specialization of work. Development in transportation and communication, increasing application of science to industry, the use of new technology. Beginnings. The Industrial Revolution began in England first because it had certain external factors. They were England had abundant resources and possessed colonies, with India being the brightest jewel in the British crown, access to coal, iron and raw cotton from the colonies. England possessed the required infrastructure for textiles developed by immigrant artisans from the Netherlands. England had a developed banking system, a growing entrepreneurial class and potential investors. Encouragement of the Royal Society of England for scientific discoveries and inventions. Political stability of England to bestow its full attention to industrial growth. Invention of steam power. In the 18th century, British mine owners were faced with the problem of water seeping into the mines. Water had to be removed to extract coal, so they employed additional laborers to pump the water out. Employing human labor cost a lot of money. It was at that juncture the British engineer Thomas Newcomen invented a contrivance to pump the water out of mines, but the mechanism he developed consumed too much fuel. James Watt, a Scottish engineer, converted a stationary steam engine to a rotary engine which consumed less fuel. Development in textiles. Before the Industrial Revolution, the spinning and weaving of cloth were undertaken for domestic and local consumption. The manually operated spinning wheel required 4 to 8 spinners to supply yarn to one handloom weaver. In 1733, John Kay invented the flying shuttle, which when operated by hand, increased the speed of the weaving of cloth. In 1764, James Hargreaves invented the spinning jenny. This machine spun 8 threads at one and the same time. After 2 years, Richard Arkwright invented the water frame. This spinning frame used water power in the place of manpower. The water frame was too big to be run at home, thus was born the factory. In 1779, Samuel Crompton invented its spinning mule, which included a combination of both the spinning jenny and the water frame. It spun hundreds of threads simultaneously and produced 8 fine and coarse threads. Haley Whitney invented the cotton gin in 1793, removing the seed from the cotton. Textile manufacture was at the heart of the Industrial Revolution. Over a span of 50 years, the textile manufacturing industry in Britain witnessed a transformation in the method of production from handmade to machine-made goods. The newly invented machines enabled factories to produce textile goods in large quantities. Derbyshire, Lancashire, Cheshire, Staffordshire, Nottinghamshire and Yorkshire became the major factory centres. The most notable was Manchester, which had more than 50 mills in 1802. These factories involved in mass production were organized on the principle of division of labor. Iron and steel. The rolling mill, that is machine for rolling steel or any other metal into sheets, proved to be 15 times faster than hammering rough iron. Hot blast greatly increased fuel efficiency in iron production. In 1856, Henry Bessemer discovered a faster and cheaper method of producing steel. In course of time, iron and steel came to be used in making all machines and in all industries. Mining. The development of factories by Arkwright and the improvement of the steam engine by James Watt further increased demand for coal. As a result, coal mines became deeper and deeper, making it more and more dangerous. As miners used oil lamp in the mines, the risk of explosion was high, leading to the death of miners. This was reduced by the invention of a safety lamp by Sir Humphrey Davy in 1815. Transport and communication. As production increased, raw materials had to be brought from afar to the factories. After the goods were produced, they had to be transported to the markets. As a result, new network of canals, roads and railroads were built. Macadamized roads and George Stephenson's steam locomotive helped to improve road and railway transport system in the country. John Loudon Macadam was a pioneering Scottish engineer who single-handedly changed the way roads were built around the world. Macadamized roads came to be adopted world over. Modern rail transport commenced with the British development of the steam locomotives in the early 19th century. The first railway line in England was opened between Stockton and Darlington in 1825. In the next 40 years, 15,000 miles of railway network was completed. Robert Fulton of the US invented the steamboat called Clermont in 1807 that sailed from New York to Albany, covering 150 miles. After a few years, steamboats carrying cargo shuttled down the rivers and coastlines. By 1830, the 40 miles between Manchester and Liverpool could be covered in an hour and a half. Effects of Industrial Revolution in England. Industrial Revolution led to the expansion of trade, the production of more food, emergence of factory workers as a new class, the rise and growth of cities, resulting in rapid urbanization and organized working class movements seeking voting rights and regulation of their service conditions brought about a new dynamics in politics. Impact on environment and living conditions. The use of chemicals and fossil fuels that replaced wind, water and firewood resulted in increased air and water pollution. The Industrial Revolution marked a major turning point in Earth's ecology and humans' relationship with the environment. The Industrial Revolution helped create opportunities for employment for all members of the family. However, the life of the laboring class was miserable. Children were employed in textile mills because they worked for lower wages. Safety was very poor in early industrial factories and mines. The injuries from machinery would vary from mild burns, harm and leg injuries to whole fingers to be cut off or amputation of limbs and even death. The housing was very tiny, dirty and sickly for the laboring class. Workers had no time to clean or change their own atmosphere even if they wished to, leading to the outbreak of typhoid, cholera and smallpox. Urbanization. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution, England became the workshop of the world. There was a general decline in agriculture. This resulted in the flow of population from villages to industrial towns. Population growth, migration, and urbanization were the major social changes taking place during this period. Manchester's cool climate was ideal for textile production. Further, it was situated close to the port of Liverpool and the coalfield of Lancashire. Manchester became the textile capital of the world, drawing huge number of migrants to the city. In 1771, Manchester was a sleepy town of 22,000 people. Over the next 50 years, its population exploded and reached up to 180,000. Socio-economic consequences. While the peasants were pauperized and the working class suffered, the middle class became wealthy by investing capital in trade and industry. The governments of the day were influenced by them. All legislation safeguarded their interest. Laborers were not permitted to form trade unions. It was under these circumstances that socialism as a new ideology was born in Europe. Karl Marx advocated scientific socialism for the protection of the working class from the exploitative policies of the capitalist class. Labor movement. The Reform Bill of 1832 granted voting rights only to the propertied middle class. Frustrated by this, the working class in a large gathering prepared a charter of demands and obtained signatures from millions of fellow workers. The charter was presented to the House of Commons, that is the English lower house in the Parliament in England, known as Chartism. This working class movement was active between 1836 and 1848. The Chartists called for voting rights to every man over 21 years of age secret ballot, that is voting system, abolition of property, qualification for members of the parliament, annual parliamentary election, and equal representation. Spread of Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution in France. France did not possess as much natural resources as England. The political instability caused by the French Revolution and the prolonged Napoleonic War wrecked the country. Many of those French businessmen who had sought refuge in Britain during the Revolution on the return to France after Napoleonic War used British technology. This helped to accomplish industrial revolution in their country. The Francois de Vendel family brought British technology to Lorraine. The family introduced steam engine in coal mining and puddling kiln for iron smelting. By diversifying its business, it entered other heavy industries such as railroad construction and shipbuilding. By the end of the 19th century, France had become prominent for its automobiles. The two biggest automobile companies of today's France were started in 1891. Harman Peugeot produced his first batch of automobiles. In 1898, Louis Renault built the quadricycle from which he began to produce in large quantities under his company, the Society Renault Fez Company Renault Brothers. Industrial Revolution in Germany. Germany had the natural resources required for an industrial revolution. Germany's main challenge was its feudal socio-political structure, perpetuating the practice of serfdom, and their unhelpful licensure policies for establishing factories. The most significant challenge to Germany's industrial revolution was its political setup. Before 1871, Germany was made of numerous German states, with Prussia being the biggest. Railroads served Germany well in its industrial development as also in its unification. The first railroad line opened on December 1835 and ran between Nuremberg and Fürth. In electrics, Germany offered companies like Siemens. In chemicals, Germany excelled in the production of potassium salt, dyes, pharmaceutical products, and synthetics. Companies like Bayer and Ost led the chemical industry of Germany. Germany became a leader in automobile industry. Daimler and Benz became the most popular brand of automobiles in Germany and the world. Second Industrial Revolution in United States of America. Samuel Slater, a citizen of England, having worked at a cotton mill from age 10, had gained enough experience to operate a mill. On learning that Americans were interested in the new techniques, Slater departed for New York in 1789 illegally. Slater offered his service to Moses Brown, a leading Rhode Island industrialist, who had earlier made an unsuccessful attempt to operate a mill. Brown agreed, and in consequence the mill became operational in 1793, being the first water-powered roller spinning textile mill in the Americas. By 1800, Slater's mill had been duplicated by many other entrepreneurs as Slater grew wealthier and his techniques more and more popular. Andrew Jackson, the US President, hailed him as father of the American Industrial Revolution. Technological innovation. The United States began to show technological innovation. Robert Fulton established the steamboat service on the Hudson River, Samuel F.B. Morse's invention of the telegraph, and Elias Howe's invention of the sewing machine. The invention of the electric bulb by Thomas Alva Edison in 1879 and telephone by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876 changed the world beyond recognition. Andrew Carnegie established the first steel mills in the US for mass production, and the US government supported the industrial growth by providing land for construction of railroads and protected the Americans' industry from foreign competition. Working class strikes. The difficult working condition in the factories, long hours of work, low wages, exploitation of women and children contributed to the growth of labor unions. After the Civil War, workers organized strikes. One major strike was the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, wage cuts in the railroad industry in the context of a prolonged economic depression led to the strike, which began in West Virginia and spread to 3 additional states over a period of 45 days before being crushed by a combination of vigilance, National Guardsmen, and Federal Army. Haymarket Massacre. A labor protest took place on 4th May 1886 at Haymarket Square in Chicago. What began as a peaceful rally in support of workers striking for an 8-hour day resulted in the killing of several workers by the police. To commemorate the Haymarket affair, 1st May 1887 is observed as the Labour Day or May Day or International Workers' Day. Impact of Industrial Revolution in India. England was an agricultural country and India was known for its excellence in manufactures as well as in agriculture. In the first quarter of 18th century, in the context of Indian cotton manufactures flooding in England, a law was enacted prohibiting the use of Indian calicoes and silks. The invention of flying shuttle by John Kay and the invention of Hargreaves, Arkwright and Crompton within 30 years accelerated the process of spinning and weaving. When the British established their foothold in Bengal as a territorial power, the loot from Bengal and the Carnatic provided the required capital and helped accomplish industrial revolution in England. The weavers of Bengal suffered at the hands of the company's officials and their agents who first insisted on payment of a transit duty for the commodities they carried from one place to another and later for cultivation of commercial crops required for British industries in England. Because of loss of market for hand-woven cotton goods, India lost her old industrial position and became an exporter of raw material. Important inventions of the Industrial Revolution era. Blast furnace, useful for iron and steel, invented by Abraham Darby in 1709. Steam engine, invented by Thomas Newcomer in 1712. Flying shuttle, useful for textiles, invented by John Kay in 1733. Improved Darby process, useful for iron and steel, invented by John Smeaton in 1760. Spinning jenny, textiles, useful for textiles, invented by James Hargreaves in 1764. Spinning frame, that is water frame, useful for textiles, invented by Richard Arkwright in 1769. Newcomen steam engine, that is redesigned, invented by James Watt in 1769. Spinning mule, useful for textiles, invented by Samuel Crompton in 1779. Power loom, useful for textiles, invented by Edmund Cartwright in 1785. Cotton gin, it is also useful for textiles, invented by Helly Whitney in 1793. Puffing devil, that is the first steam-powered locomotive, invented by Richard Trevithick in 1801. Hair pump, useful for mines, invented by John Bandel in 1807. The butcher, invented by George Stephenson in 1814. Safety lamp for mining, invented by Humphrey Davy in 1815. Telegraph, that is Morse code communication, invented by Samuel Morse in 1844. Sewing machine for textiles, invented by Heliazov in 1846. Cheaper method of making steel, useful for iron and steel, invented by Henry Bessemer in 1856. And telephone was invented by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876. Incandescent electric bulb, that is without candle, invented by Thomas Alva Edison in 1879. Wireless signals, that is useful for communication, invented by Marconi in 1899. These are the important inventions of the Industrial Revolution era. Now let me go through a short recap. The main attributes of Industrial Revolution are presented. Reasons for Industrial Revolution taking place first in England are explained. Inventions leading to development in textiles are discussed. Use of iron and steel leading to mechanization of all industries and the rapid changes in transport and communication are detailed. Impact of Industrial Revolution on environment and living conditions are highlighted. Spread of Industrial Revolution in France, Germany and America are dwelt at length. Labor movement and the repressive measures of the state in the US are particularly focused to demonstrate that the rights of working class were obtained after struggles and sacrifices. My dear students, go through the lessons and learn book back exercise. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.